All right. Well, let me talk to you. I need to give you a principle for spiritual deliverance. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes on that. And here's the thing. What is spiritual deliverance? Do you know what that is? Demonic power, casting out demons, things like that? Okay. When we hear something like that, some people believe it, some people don't. Some people say, I've experienced it, and some people say it's kind of scary, sometimes it's messy, sometimes people throw up, sometimes people are on the floor, things like that, right? And then you say, how many of us really enjoy doing that kind of thing? Do you like it? Do you like to minister to people and have them be all over the floor and throwing up and things like that? It's like, oh, I love that. Yeah, I love to do that kind of stuff. No, most people don't. Most people don't. That's why very few people are involved in this. Now, when you talk about spiritual deliverance, what exactly is spiritual deliverance, and who does it apply to? How do you know it when someone needs spiritual deliverance? Let me ask you a question. In the Bible, we know that there was a man who was tormented by a spirit, but he was not on the floor, he did not throw up, or at least it wasn't recorded in the Bible that he did that. But we knew that he had a lot of hate and a lot of fear. Who was that man? No. He had a lot of hate and fear, and he was tormented by the spirit. It's very clear in the Bible. Old Testament man.
Saul.
King Saul. King Saul. We know in reading in the story in Samuel, okay, he was tormented by a spirit, so they brought David, to play and sing for him. Did it help him? Temporary, because they have to keep bringing him back. So the spirit never really went away. The spirit kept tormenting him. It's just like if people are tormented by the spirit, you come to worship, you might feel a little bit better, but the spirit doesn't leave. Do you know why the spirit didn't leave? The person hold on to it. Here's the thing. The spirit has no authority over us as Christians unless we open the door. The spirit cannot torment us unless we open the door. Okay. The spirit cannot, let me rephrase it. The spirit cannot have access to our lives and torment us from that perspective unless you and I open the door. He has no authority over us unless we give it authority. Now, it's possible that the spirit could try to hurt us from outwardly, like cause people to persecute us and things like that. Like what happened to Paul. Now, that's possible. But the spirit cannot torment us from the inside unless we open the door for it. Okay, I think all Christians agree to that. We all know that. So spiritual deliverance, the definition of spiritual deliverance, it's of several slides down. Because I'm skipping a whole bunch of this. Keep going. I think it might be the next slide. Nope, sorry, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. There it is. Basically, the definition of spiritual deliverance is this: discovering what is given that demons or the spirit authority to remain in our lives or in our home. What doors have been opened that allow these spirits to latch onto our soul? After discovering these doors, we shut them, we transfer the authority back to Christ. So, one more click, please. So, spiritual deliverance is basically teaching someone to yield to the lordship of Christ. Okay. Why This is what spiritual deliverance is. Close the doors because we have opened the doors. Even things that we have done in the past as non-believers before we come to know Jesus. If those doors remain open, they still could torment us or oppress us. We still could feel guilt about it, fear about it. People who come to know Jesus, let's say if you have a fear of ghosts, for example, because a door was open. And then you come to know Jesus. It doesn't mean that 100% of the people who have fear of ghosts, when they come to know Jesus, no longer have a fear of ghosts. A few would no longer have a fear of ghosts, but most people would still have the fear of ghosts. So because of that door that we open, so you still have to close that door up, that fear of ghosts. Does that make sense? Okay. It doesn't mean that as non-Christian, when we come to accept Jesus, after you accept Jesus, it means like, oh, I'm perfect in my life, I have no more fear, no. It means that you're righteous from God's perspective and you're saved. But you still got to work out your salvation. There's still hurts and pain and sin issues that we need to deal with in our lives. Okay? So it's a sanctification process. That's why our lives is a sanctification process. It's not a perfection. Nobody accepts Jesus and say, oh, I accept Jesus, look at me, I'm so perfect now. No, you don't see that. You see some healing, you see some cleansing, but it's still a sanctification journey. Okay. All right, so this is what spiritual deliverance is. Now, we'll skip this for now, and we'll just keep going. Okay, and just one click. Okay, this is a very important question. When we minister to people, can spirit transfer from one person to another? This is a very good question that we need to answer. What do you think the answer is? Yes or no?
Yes, the other side is the other person.
The facilitator? Yeah, exactly. There's two answers. Okay, the first one is no. Click, but you can double click. Okay, the first one is no. The demons can't transfer if we're holy. But if you and I have similar doors that are open, yes, the demons can transfer. That's why. That's the reason. People go out and minister to people and they come back and they say, I feel their fear, I now have their fear. That's the reason. That's why afterward they say, I need cleansing. Nobody explains it. Nobody understands it. So instead they teach you, before you go minister, you just pray it over yourself, and after you pray for people, have people pray it over you. And then even after people pray over you, some people still have a lot of fear that they already received. Because people don't understand this. People don't understand that if you have your doors open, then there's a transferring process that can take place. You pray for somebody that has certain fear, and you have that little fear in your life, and that their fear is big, boom, it becomes very big for you. This is the reason. But here's what makes it so difficult, because look, what are the kind of doors that you and I can open that will allow the enemy to torment us? Think about it. Do you know why our young people are cutting themselves? Why there are Jaina and why are there hikikomoris who lock themselves in a room, who never wants to go out? Where I just came from, last week, a mom, after we prayed for her, she got healed up, but she had a daughter, 2 years, never set foot out of her house. 2 years, can you imagine that? So she brought her daughter to the training. After the mom got healed up, she said, this is the first time my daughter set foot out of the house in 2 years' time. And she had some torment in her life. You can see it. Because the mom wanted me to talk to the daughter, she wasn't ready for that. 2 years, never set foot out of the house. That It's a little bit of issue there. So, what are the kind of doors that we can open? There are thousands and thousands of doors that people can open. Even just if you go to India, because there are thousands and thousands of god and goddesses. So, if we try to figure out what all the thousands of doors are, guess what? Very difficult. But what if I were to tell you all of these thousands of doors can be categorized into 4 major categories of doors. And all of the doors that we open will fall under these 4 major categories. Let me give you an example. Your house. Maybe your house might have 10 doors, 15 doors, right? However many doors you have at home. You might have one type is the entry door, the front or the back door, entry door. Another is bedroom doors. Maybe another one is the bathroom doors. Or if you have closet doors. Okay, so you can say those are 4 types. But you have 4 types, 4 categories of doors, but you can have 10, 15, 20 doors in one house. Okay. So if you understand these 4 categories, I am saying to you that every single door that we open has to fall under these 4 categories. Every single one. I haven't seen any exception. Yeah. Okay, so next page, give us maybe the list of the 4 doors. Here it is. These are the 4 door types. The hate and fear, we see that Saul had a lot of hate and fear. Hate and unforgiveness as well. People that have hate and unforgiveness, they're tormented. Such torment. The story in Matthew 18 about the king that forgave the first servant, but the first servant would not forgive the second servant. In the initial translation, the king threw out the first servant outside to be tormented. The later translation said that the king threw that first servant and put him in jail. That's really, those 2 translations mean something very different. It's not putting them in jail, it's throwing them out to be tormented. So if you have unforgiveness, hate, whatever, there's a lot of torment. You open the door to be tormented. Fear. Think about this. The enemy loves to use fear. That's why there is such a rise of horror movies, in the last 20 years. Such a rise. Why? Because things like Halloween. You don't have Halloween here, right? But you know what Halloween is? Yeah? So in America, Halloween is like their Easter or Christmas for the satanic worshiper. It's Halloween. Halloween, a lot of fear. I worked with people who have been involved in satanic worship. One of the persons said, we were taught to put 2 types of curses on people. The first type, constant hate. The second type, constant fear. The satanic worshiper understand all these 4 doors because curses that they put constant hate, constant fear. Plus, there's the occult, the worship of Satan. Plus, there's a lot of sexual activity, immorality within those practices. A lot of sexual abuse. These are the doors that make up the satanic worshipers, and these are the doors that when people open, it causes us to be tormented. So if I ask you a question, why do our young people, why are they beginning to lock themselves in rooms? Why are they starting to kill themselves and attempting suicide, committing suicide? Why is that number on the rise? It's because they have opened these doors. Do you know how easy it is to open the doors? Come on, it is not hard at all. You want to find anything, even the movies. That's why we talked about Harry Potter yesterday. It seems so innocent. Disney movies. If you look at Disney cartoons nowadays, they are drawing little children in. They're glamorizing witchcraft, and they make it so good, so that young people say, "Look, there's nothing wrong with it." But then you become a teenager, Harry Potter. You know Harry Potter, even Harry Potter, each one of its sequel gets darker and darker and darker. Because Satan knows how to work. You know, sin does never stand still. You bring them in, it's just going to get darker and darker and darker. This is the reason our young people all over the world, this is the reason why they have so much problems. And because the church doesn't have the answer, what do? We send them to mental hospital, we send them to mental institution, and how are they treated? They're treated on the symptoms, and the medication suppress the symptoms, but they do not deal with the root. And that's why it takes so long to help them. The secular world will not have the answer to the root issues. They will never find it. Because it's a spiritual root issue. It's not a secular problem. It's not a physical problem. Let me put it that way. It's not physical, it's a spiritual issue. And the secular world will not find it because they can't see it from a spiritual perspective unless they know Jesus. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it's not that hard to help them. I tell you this because I work with so many of these types of people. I mean, you give me the type of person. There may be some categories that I haven't worked with, but I have worked with a lot of different categories of people, types of people who struggle with whatever, you name it. I have worked with at least one, for the most part. One of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing is because the church needs to rise up. And the church now that I'm working with are rising up and they're helping these kind of people and they're being set free. And it's not hard. It's not hard at all. These are the doors. That's why I asked, do you want to get deep? Do you want a lot of healing or just a little? Because if you want a lot, we got to deal with some serious issues of sins in our lives. That's why. And I am seeing people setting other people free nowadays. I am very willing to work with any group of people as long as we're interested in setting captives free so we can advance the kingdom of God together. That's why I do what I do. And it's not all that hard. So these are the 4 doors. So, look, there are many warnings in the Bible. Don't get involved in these things. Don't get involved in witchcraft. Don't get involved in fortune telling. Don't do these things. So people who say, well, Harry Potter, nothing wrong with it. Oh, there's a lot of witchcraft. There's a lot of magic. There's a lot of curses. And when you read the book, you're actually reciting curses. Okay? So the church, I'm not aware of, you recite curses. Sometimes curses on people, curses on yourself. Door open, that's why that young man became paralyzed. But what makes it so difficult, confusing, is because of the spiritual tolerance level that we talked about yesterday. For those of you who came in a little bit later, you can have 2 men drink the same glass of hot liquor, One will be impacted immediately. Oh, I'm so drunk, and the other is like, ooh, it's so good, give me more. And so if two people watch a horror movie, one can say, oh, I'm so scared, I can't sleep at night, and the other say, oh, I love horror movie, I want to watch more. Even Christians have told me that. And they have no idea it impacts them. And yet, they do have certain other fears, but they can connect it to the doors that are open. That's why there's so much confusion among the Christian. It's not every person who does the same activities will see the impact right away. That's why it's so confusing among the Christian. That's all. And the only other thing that you need to be aware of is that there are sometimes soul ties. Soul ties, the bad soul ties, there are good soul ties. A good husband and wife relationship is a good soul tie. This term is not in the Bible, but the meaning behind it is that the two become of one flesh. And sometimes, for example, a lady could be in an abusive relationship. Even though she's in an abusive relationship, she cannot leave that person. She tried to leave it, and even though she might be abused physically, verbally, sexually, whatever, she still wants to come back to that relationship. There's such a strong tie for it. And maybe some of you have worked with women like that, and you say, I don't understand. Why do you keep running back to that man even though he abuses you? Say, I don't know why, but I need him. It's such a strong tie. It's like a string. And every time she runs away, she can only get so far, and for only a day or two, it always draws her back. Boom. Now, a husband, when he gets married, the Bible said, break that ties with your mom, and be one with your wife. Develop that tie with your wife. But there are some husbands, they can't do that. It's just like when the wife said to the husband, honey, what do you think? Can we go do this? And the husband said, let me check with my mom first. Bad. It's like that. It's so bad. That's why God told us clearly, break that ties with your mom, with your dad, and be one. Come with the tie, with your spouse, your wife. So these ties, it's based on some sort of vow, pact, agreement, whether we speak it or not, that bind one person to another, and the next, it's like a bridge that transfers all these spiritual garbage that forces, it actually literally forces the person to submit to the other person's will or authority in a negative way. You just can't run from it. And these ties comes in through hate and fear, sexual relationship. Sexual relationships are outside of the context of marriage could produce these ties. Not all. And how do we know that? Because in 1 Corinthians 6:16 said, a man who has a relationship with a prostitute become one with her. Okay? So you can establish ties sexually. Even a person who has been sexually abused. Many little girls that have been adopted from Russia, they have a lot of spiritual issue. It's been documented because they've been sexually abused when they were a little girl. Okay? See, so I want you to understand the principle behind all of this, the doors that we open. Now, if you talk to the young people in Malaysia who attempted suicide or who locked themselves in the room, you will find they have opened one of these 4 doors, at least one. It could be they've been playing a lot of demonic games or a lot of sexual sins. Or it could be because of the hate that they grew up or the fear that they grew up in their environment. Or a combination, or all 4 of these doors. And if you talk to them, you will discover that's what it is. And that's all it is. You will be surprised when you talk to them. The deeper cases, it's just one of these 4 doors that they have open. That's all. And it applies to every single culture and every single age. And it doesn't matter what kind of professional education they've had. It doesn't matter whatever background. It will apply to any one of us if we open these doors.
And so how do you define what is a demonic game?
How do we define?
What are the characteristics that you say you look for to define a game as demonic?
The game?
Demonic games.
Oh, games?
Because,
Demonic games? Some are very, very obvious. You know, if you see things that look like demons, that's demonic. Sometimes, now, look, it's even creeping in the cartoon, in Lego. You know Lego? Even the Lego set, they have characters that look like demons now. But they look like cute demons. Okay? I remember one day I received a Lego magazine, and my kids were like 4 and 5 or something like that. And I said, my goodness, this is Lego, and these look like little demons. And I talked to my kids about that. I was just so shocked. Nowadays, when we go to stores in America, they have pictures of dolls that look like vampires and things like that, but they make it look like high school students. And people are just buying these kind of things. They have people that are looking like a lot of skulls and things like that, you know, just anything horrifying. The demonic games, so you have those that you can see, you have anything of the occult, like witchcraft, magic, you know, putting magic on people, curses on people, things like that. And even, you know, even something as cute as Pokemon. Okay? You know the difference between Pokemon? Pokemon, and there's another game in America called Dungeons and Dragons. Same concept. The only difference is that Dungeons and Dragons, you have monsters that look really bad. Pokemon, you have cute looking monsters. In Dungeons and Dragons, you try to kill off the other monster. In Pokemon, you don't kill off the monster, you just make them disappear. So the terminology is just cuter for little kids. You don't kill people, you just make them disappear. Right? So mom and dad said, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. It's so cute. Let's just make them disappear. But you know the problem? The problem is that the company that make Pokemon is the same company that make Dungeons and Dragons. So what they do is you bring that and you draw the little ones in. And mom and dad say it's okay. So when they become teenager, Harry Potter is okay because it's the same thing and it's cute. And a lot of movies nowadays, they glamorized. You know, the occult and the witchcraft, and they say it's okay, look, here's a witch, but she's a good witch. Yes, she puts spell on people, but it's a good spell. And so, as parents, as Christian, oh, it's okay, they're good. Oh, it's okay, they're just so cute. Do you see the problem? So, if your child has a problem, if someone that you know has a problem, and they have suicidal thoughts, if they're very depressed, it's one of those 4 doors. They either have a lot of hate, a lot of fear, some sort of sin in their lives, sexually kind of thing, or some occult activities. Either came in through the video games, through the movies they watched, the books that they read, some sort of things that they participated in. That is all it is. So from a spiritual perspective, these 4 doors are much deeper. And when people open these doors, they're tormented. The torment can be, I have a lot of jealousy, maybe even violence, or a lot of bitterness. They're always blaming people, or a lot of fear and they can't sleep at night, or they want to isolate themselves, or they want to attempt suicide, or they're very depressed. These are all the manifestation. Even homosexuality and sexual addiction, those are just manifestation of these doors that have been opened. But when you merge the spiritual deliverance principle with that of the emotional healing in that box, the padlock, the chain, and the lies, and you combine all of that together, see, a person who's struggling with homosexuality, they got the sexual sin, they may have a lot of hate, they may have a lot of fear, but they also have the lie that we're not good enough. Okay? That's all it is. Yes. Tattoo on the body, yeah. Well, yeah, tattoo is a sin. And yes, but it's not, it could be. Because, tattoo is more, it's not actually the open door itself. People that usually get tattooed, especially the very demonic tattoo, it's just a reflection of some of the other things that they're already doing. A person, who haven't opened many doors would not just go ahead and get a tattoo of a demon, right? The only reason they would get a tattoo of a demon is because their heart already is filled with a lot of demonic things. Okay, so it's a reflection of that. And tattoo is being glamorized too nowadays because all of the professional sports, almost every NBA player has tattoos. Not only one, but sometimes all over their body.
How about the non-demonic pictures?
Usually, the non-demonic picture, it's a reflection of where they are in their heart. So, it's a sin. Because the Bible said don't get tattoos. It's a sin.
Which verse?
I don't remember the verse. It's in the Old Testament. Maybe Leviticus, you're right, but we can find that later. But it just said don't put marks on yourself or don't get tattoos. So it's not necessarily open the doors. So that itself doesn't open the door. It's a reflection of the doors that you've already opened.
So how do we help people like that?
Who have tattoos? No different, the same way. I don't even talk about the tattoos, until later. I used to minister to tattoo artists. I go to the tattoo shops, and I minister to them. And the thing about me, I'm a very shy person. I'm not very brave. Okay, but I will do the things that God wants me to do. Okay, so I've ministered to tattoo artists. I've been there, so I understand a little bit of that. Okay, and so I don't address the tattoo. You deal with them. It's their heart. Tattoo is a reflection of what's in their heart. It's all of these things.
But once they're done, cannot be undone.
Well, if you pay a lot of money, you can undo it, right? So it can be undone in certain cases. But even if they don't undo it, it's all right. Because what you and I have, I know. I have a friend and he had a lot of tattoos before he came to know the Lord, and afterward, he still had the tattoo, but he's a completely changed man.
Yeah.
Okay. And he didn't have the money to get him undone, so it's okay. It's a mistake. All right. So that's all. Yes, Shirley.
How about those curses that go generation?
Oh, generational curses. Okay. I don't teach on generational curses because there's a lot of teaching on generational curses. Do you know why I don't teach on generational curses? Because find every passage talk about the sins of the father that's passed on to the next generation. So every single passage, guess who it's addressed to? Read it in context. Who is it addressed to? the sins of the father will pass on to the next generation, to those who, what does the Bible say? To those who what? To those who hate God. But to those who love God, pass on to the third and fourth, thousand generation. It's different. It's different. For non-believers, the curses get passed on. For believers, everything changes. So people teach on these things, and sometimes we don't look at the Bible in its context. So it's too easy for you and I to hear what people say and what people teach, and we said, oh, this must be so. But let's look at what the Bible says. You and I, we have addressed a number of things already that we've learned from our church, and all churches do this. Like, for example, we deal with sins first. We've been taught that over and over again. But we don't see Jesus dealing with sin first. Okay, so let me give you another example. We are so used sometimes to using things and applying things out of context. And we've been taught that. And it's not necessarily. Paul warned us. He said, you imitate me as I imitate Christ. Okay, you know what he's saying? He said, you do what I do if I do what Christ did. But don't imitate me if I don't imitate Christ. And sometimes we have been taught to do things based on what another person has done, but it doesn't reflect what Christ has done. And that is wrong. We didn't realize it because we don't really think about it from that perspective. Now, we want to honor our authority, but we don't want to do something that goes against the Word of God. In loving ways, we need to approach these kind of things. We're not accusing, condemning, none of that, because we all make mistakes. All right? So let me give you another example of how we use things out of context. 2 Timothy 1:7. Well, some of you know that verse. For God did not give you a spirit of fear, but of love, of power, and a sound mind. So how do we normally use that verse? Have you ever quoted that verse to someone? Yes? When? When would you quote that verse to someone? When they have fear. Oh, okay, I'm so fearful. You say, well, wait a minute. God didn't give you a spirit of fear. He gave you love, power, and a sound mind. So don't be afraid. He's going to give you love and power. Right? We use that all the time. But wrong usage. Do you know why it's wrong? Because you look at the context. What does 2 Timothy 1:6 say? Most people don't know. 2 Timothy 1:6 tells us this. Paul was speaking to Timothy. He said, Timothy, I want you to fan into flame. I want you to stir up the gift that was upon you when I laid my hands upon you. For God did not give you a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. It's in the context of if you and I utilize our gifts and we stir it up and we use it to help people come to know the kingdom. Max said, if you have the spiritual gift and you exercise it, spiritual muscle, you grow strong. If you and I use our gifts, use it and fan it and stir it, then we will be strong. He can give us a spirit of fear. But it's not like, I am fearful. Let me sit. God's going to just give you power. You don't use anything. All you do is just sit. And when you tell people that, it usually doesn't work anyway. After you leave, and you say, God didn't give you a spirit of fear. And they say, oh, thank you. Thank you for praying for me, but I'm still fearful. We use it out of context. So I challenge us. What does the Word of God say? Not necessarily what we think is right. Use it in context. So now I challenge people, let's go and use our gifts. Let's do great things for Jesus. For He didn't give us a spirit of fear, but love, power, Oh, we have so much love, we have so much. That is in its right context. Okay? So you don't want to train people. You just sit there and do nothing and you'll be strong. That never works. They don't ever get strong if they do nothing. It's just like, if you tell me I don't have to exercise and I'm going to be strong, very muscular, I would love that. I'm going to eat all I want. Yeah, if I could just eat and watch movies all day and I get strong, come on. I do nothing. Wrong context.
Can I just add on something to that question? The Bible doesn't really talk about generational sin, but it does mention something called generational iniquity. Yeah, and iniquity and sin is different. Sin is that you are just saying what it implies is that the child is paying for the sins of their parents. And this one is definitely wrong, because looking at there's a layman in the Bible, then they ask him, no, is it because the parents sin or he sin? There's nothing to do with that. But there's actually called generational iniquity, where you carry down the flaws of your ancestors. And those flaws can lead to sin or can jeopardize your life. And this is found in Leviticus 26 verse 40.
What was Leviticus?
Leviticus 26 verse 40 to 48. Yeah. So you will not pay for sins of another person, but you can carry the flaws of the ancestors. And that has to be dealt with God. Yeah.
Okay, any other question? Now, in terms of the practical application, because we merged the two now, the 4 doors are now incorporated into the 4 columns, but we also, in addition to dealing with hate, we have the anger, the fear, the anger, the shame, the depression, all these things. So it's all incorporated into those 4 columns. The only thing is step 3 and step 4. Step 3 and step 4, step 3 we break the soul ties. And step 4, at step 4 we cast out the impure spirit. But I usually do step 3 and step 4 in like 2 minutes time. No longer than 2 minutes. Very easy, very quick. So it doesn't take long. So I break the ties. The ties that we break has to do with people, the hate and the fear, the sexual relationship, any of the curses kind of thing. So those are the things that we would break the ties to in step 3. And then step 4, after you close all the door. By the way, I have to warn you, sometimes when you pray for people who have been involved in open these 4 doors, sometimes they will have manifestation. That's why they would vomit, or they would have headaches and things like that. Do you know why you sometimes see those manifestations? And this is the last thing I want to talk about. Here's the reason. If a kid has a toy, so you have 2 kids, wanting the toy, and they would struggle with it, mine. The reason you see that kind of manifestation is because it's an ownership issue. They believe they have the right to be there, okay, or they have the right to this thing. So if let me give you an illustration. This left hand represents us. If we open the door, the enemy will come in and they can latch on to us, and they have the right to be there. And if you try to cast out the spirit, then there's this struggle. Mine, I have the right to be there. Mine. I work with a young lady, missionary by the way. Her mom, when she was a little girl, took her to a temple and dedicated her. She wasn't married, wasn't pregnant, but the mom said, we are going to dedicate her first baby to this goddess. Okay. However, when she grew up and she got married and her first baby that she was pregnant with, she had an abortion. So anytime this was back in the old days, I didn't understand what I'm teaching you today. So when we try to help her cast out the spirit, her stomach, her wound was in so much pain. She was on the ground yelling and all these things, tormented. It took us 6 hours, 3 sessions, until we discovered this door, that her mom took her and dedicated her newborn baby, her to this goddess. And we renounced that. Then when we cast out the spirit, it left very easily. But before, it would not leave because the spirit had the right to be there. So that's why there's a lot of manifestation, because they have the right. But if you discover these doors and you begin to close them, break them, and then you do all of that and you cast out the spirit, they will go out easily. So much fewer manifestation, much less. Now, as Christian, we still have the right to cast out demons. Some of you, like in Indonesia, in certain places in Malaysia and Thailand, if they worship a lot of other gods, there's a lot of manifestation that could. So if you're in public places, you can still cast out the spirit and they would leave if you walk in the authority. But when you work among the Christian who's been tormented and others in private setting, if you use this, you would see a lot less manifestation and a lot more healing, especially if you work with your own young people who's been tormented. Okay? So a combination of these two, you have gotten the turbocharged training. I've never done a turbocharged training, so this is special. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate getting to know each one of you, and just blessings upon you guys. So if I have another hour from 11 to 12, okay. So I can talk about anything. So I can give you more of this. Okay, I can talk about physical healing. And I have good news about physical healing. Physical healing, it's emotional healing, spiritual deliverance, it's easy. Physical healing, very easy. Very, very easy. Okay? And so if you want to hear about that, I can do that. If you want to hear about how to grow stronger disciple, anything, marriages, anything. So any topic would be fine. Or if you just want to get deeper and emotional, if you want to practice, I can help you practice this as well. We have one more hour to go after tea. So, any preference? What was your intention when you put that 11 to 12 slot?
I don't know.
So what's the title on that?
I don't know. Delivered to disciple. Okay, discipleship.
Discipleship. I can talk about discipleship that will take you to the next step. Okay? So, you set people free, but if you want them to maintain the freedom, then discipleship will be the next step. But the discipleship program that I have, it is so easy. And yet, the people, instead of saying, let me disciple you, and they say, no, I have no time, they will come to you and say, can you disciple me? So, and it's very, very easy. Everything I teach is very easy, but it's very practical and yet extremely effective, because we are raising a spiritual army that will do great things for Jesus for the days ahead. So let's talk about discipleship, because it will help you maintain the freedom that people receive. Okay?